All right, good morning and welcome. I'm Georgette Huey, a deacon here at Chinese Congregational Church, otherwise known as CCC. This rainy morning, we are experiencing some delays. Our speakers have not yet arrived, but I'll continue on with some introductory words, okay? We're gathered here to see the documentary Block by Block. If you came here expecting something else, or you came in just to get out of the rain, that's okay, stay. We're expecting a great film and wonderful speakers, and there will be delicious refreshments downstairs afterwards. Now, some of you may have passed by this building and not realized it was a church. But we have been here, the church and the building have been here since the 1920s. And obviously we're still here and now overlooking the City College extension and somehow magically located right next door to Chinese for Affirmative Action, CAA. But since we are in a 1920s built building, you've probably already noticed that we are not ADA compliant. So if you have problems navigating stairs, please don't hesitate to ask for help. We have some strong folks who can assist you. We do have a bathroom on this level, and it is located outside the sanctuary doors and to your left. And there will be people in the hallway who can show you directions if you need them. Should we have to evacuate for whatever reason, our exit is the same door that you came through. And as I mentioned, after the session, you are invited to go downstairs to our social hall for refreshments. And it's kind of sad that I need to say this, but given our current events, should there be an unwelcome visit from ICE or other government folks, we ask that you stay here in the sanctuary. We have people, church leaders outside who are prepared to deal with that situation. So in these unusual times, along with a rise in anti-immigration activities, the last decade has brought a rise in what is known as Christian nationalism. Because CCC is a Christian church, I thought it would be important to tell you a little bit about who we are, because who we are is not that. We are nowhere close to being Christian nationalists. Next slide, please. We belong to an American denomination known as the United Church of Christ, or UCC. Our traditional logo includes the cross, you can see that on the left, but our contemporary logo is a comma. You see it there in red. Why a comma? It comes from a quip from 20th century comedian Gracie Allen, when she said, "Never place a period where God has placed a comma." Interesting. When we think about sentences and words that have periods, they're very static, very set, unyielding, authoritative. Words or sentences that have commas invite conversation, give and take, dynamic interaction. And so we believe God is still speaking. And in our church, as we listen to the still speaking God, we believe, next slide please, that we are called to be open and affirming of diverse peoples, including support for the rights and identities of LGBTQ+ folks. And so we can say in our mission statement No matter who you are or where you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. So let us welcome folks on Zoom who have already realized they are muted and cannot unmute themselves, nor that can they use chat. After the film, during Q&A, those of you on Zoom will be allowed to unmute yourself if you have a question. To get in line to ask a question, you will need to learn how to use the Zoom emojis to raise your hand. Next slide, please. So you can see here the instructions if you've never done this. Look at the bottom of your screen for a heart that says reactions. Click the heart and click raise hand, and that will signify that you have a question. If you're using your phone and connecting to Zoom through your browser, you will not have access to the emojis. So you will need to download the Zoom app and connect that way. During Q&A, we will alternate between in-person questions and Zoom questions. The use of Zoom enables us to record this event, so everyone, please know that we will be recorded. If you are in person and prefer not to be on camera, you may move to the back of the sanctuary where the cameras will not spot you. If you are an old-timer, you might have known my mother, Isabel Huey. She worked for Henry Durr back in the day at CAA. And together, they and so many others improved the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of people, not just Chinese Americans, through their work for fairness and equity. And that work continues today. When Mom retired, she did not stop working for justice. And in her late 70s and early 80s, was on street corners in Chinatown gathering signatures for this project. It meant so much to her. And so it meant so much to me that this film was made, documenting the efforts she and so many others, including our speakers, Henry Durr and Joanne Low, what they did to bring college education to Chinatown. Henry has become a friend of my family, and Joanne is a member here at CCC. And so it gives me great pleasure to welcome them forward. And Henry, well, when you get a moment, come up when you're ready. And introduce yourself and tell us about the film. And I assume Joanne's on her way. Yes. Or if you can stand here or here, whichever you like.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you very much, Georgette. Joanne and I were to come down here together this morning, but she just came back from overseas travel, so her time clock is a little off, but she will be here. Thank you very much for inviting us to show this film about the struggle to bring community college to San Francisco Chinatown. This particular film is a product of the CAA Oral History Project, which is an effort to understand the work that Chinese for Affirmative Action, this church's neighbor, has done for more than 55 years. When I retired in fall of 2020, I worked with a grad student and to archive more than 50 boxes of materials that belong to CAA in a storage facility. So we brought the materials to the community room to catalog it. And through the process of cataloging these written documents, looking at work that was done from the beginning of the founding of CAA in 1969, it was pretty obvious that there were gaps in the materials because, oftentimes written materials don't capture everything that happened with a civil rights activity in the area of employment or immigration, education, and the like. So after the catalog was done, I had a conversation with our current co-executive director at CAA, Vincent, who's sitting there in the audience, about the possibility of maybe capturing the work that was done in the struggle about bringing community college to Chinatown through either a photo exhibit or a video project. And after many discussions with various members of the community who were involved with this particular project, it was decided that we would make a 15-minute film. Well, it turned out that 15-minute was really not sufficient to cover all the ins and outs of the struggle that occurred to get the City College campus building built. So we worked with the filmmakers to say, okay, we can do maybe up to 30 minutes, but that's all. Because if we do more than 30 minutes, it's very hard for students in a class, whether it's in a community college class or a four-year university, to look at a film that would exceed a class instructional hour of 50 to 60 minutes. So we went to work to put together the film, look at a lot of archival materials, and to our surprise, during the time of the struggle of 07 and 08, when there was intense opposition to the building of this campus building, one of our community members, Russ Low, who was then a aide to Senator Dianne Feinstein, on his own, he actually took out his mini video cam to capture a lot of the events that occurred around 07, 08. And he also took pictures with his camera about different events. So with what was in the written materials, what Russ was able to gather and record with his mini video cam, and also doing other research to gather materials, the filmmakers were able to put together this 30-minute film. The film covers just a 2-year period of a struggle, but in truth, the struggle for community college education access to Chinatown residents occurred from the very beginning of the formation of the San Francisco Community College District in fall of 1970. And that date is actually quite historic because today, in 2025, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Community College District. And it was and at that time of 1970, it was a year after the founding of Chinese affirmative action. And during that time, there was a great awakening about the need for educational opportunities for new immigrants and refugees coming to San Francisco. So the time could not have been better to access opportunities to help to improve people's lives. And on a personal basis, it so happened in fall of 1970, that was when I concluded 2 years of my service in Peace Corps Kenya. So when I came back, one of the first things I did in 1971 was to teach ESL at the Chinatown North Beach English Language Center, located on the corner of Clay and Montgomery Street. And that was where I met Georgette's mother, Isabel Hui, who was then the employment coordinator for the Chinatown North Beach English Language Center. And from that time on to 1971, until her passing, we, many of us in the community established a long working relationship with Isabel, who was a very dedicated, loyal member of the community. And for that, Georgette, and to your family, we are internally grateful for her contributions. If nothing else, this film tries to capture all the people who were involved so that we don't forget the history of what happened through these many, many years. So I just see Joanne just stepped in. Joanne just returned from her trip overseas. If you could just come up, I just gave some history. If you can give some brief remarks, and then we'll get the film going.
I apologize for running so late this morning. I'm very happy to be able to present this block-by-block documentary here at this church. The Chinese Christian Union in particular were so instrumental. Reverend Wong at the time was the president of the organization, and he came to all the hearings and spoke very, Calvin Wong, yes, very passionately about the project. But it wasn't just during the hearings. I think Chinatown has a history of the churches supporting education in Chinatown. First, English as a second language classes happened at Old St. Mary's for all the immigrants that landed on our shores here. And then later on, we relied as a campus on the churches. And I remember we started at the Presbyterian Church, and then we had classes at the Methodist Church. And at the Methodist Church, when they suddenly decided not to renew our lease, like they told us like in April that we're not gonna have classes there in the fall, again, this church in particular gave us classroom space, Cameron House gave us space, and again, where we were able to have classes. 500 students would not have been served if the churches did not come to our rescue. So this is part of our struggle, but it goes back many years in terms of having support from the church community. So we'll answer questions later.
Yeah, for those on Zoom, Henry just shared that the first minute of the film is silent, don't worry. That's the way it's supposed to be. We have some time. We said the film would show at 10:30, and I kind of want to hold a little bit to that. This church was, when it was first founded, one of its main missions, as I understand it, was exactly to teach English to Chinese immigrants. So it was both a past history and a more contemporary history. So thank you for mentioning that we offered up space for ESL. In the next 5 minutes, I'm wondering if Vincent would like to come and just share what CAA is up to.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vincent Pan. I'm the co-executive director of Chinese for Affirmative Action. And so I'm glad that you're all here to see this film, and it's a look back for sure, and a struggle that I was a part of. And all of you know that we're in the middle of many struggles now to protect the humanity and dignity of all of our neighbors. I think in the last week or so, we've seen a real escalation on some of the threats and the dangers, in particular for our immigrant community members, but also for everyone in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And there's a lot of different work that Chinese for Affirmative Action pursues, but I did bring some materials that I'll leave with others here that they can take that I think are especially relevant now. And we have more of these at CAA if there aren't enough here. The first are these red cards. And these red cards are basically cards that any individual can give if approached by law enforcement. And on one side is in English, and it basically says what your rights are. And so you would give this to, say, a law enforcement or immigration agent. And it begins, I do not wish to speak with you, answer your questions, or sign or hand you any documents based on my Fifth Amendment rights under the United States Constitution. And on the other side is in Chinese too, right? Because what we've seen is that there have been many, many people, hundreds of US citizens who've been wrongfully detained, in addition to obviously thousands of others who've been wrongfully detained. And so, for those of you who are thinking, well, I'm a citizen, I don't need this, just know that you may need it. And or you may know others who need it. These red cards are being used throughout the country. And so it's something that immigration enforcement agents are familiar with. And so it's an immediate type of protection because they know that an individual is part of a bigger community and has support. We also have these one-page immigrant know your rights flyers. On the front is English, on the back is Chinese. It also has a QR code that individuals can scan for more information. And it gives some guidance like what to do if ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, comes to your door, if they approach you on the street, if they go to your workplace. I'll share something very, very frightening, but I believe a couple days ago, we at CA received a call from the governor's office, and with all the escalated talk about a surge in the Bay Area, there was real concern that Chinatown would be one of the places targeted. And you may have seen that there was a mass enforcement in New York Chinatown. Right? And so at CA, we've been doing door-to-door distribution of these flyers to businesses, to residents, and and we've been tabling, much as we did with the City College campaign, just on the street to give people information. And our experience is that they're desperately looking for this type of information. And then lastly, there are ways that others can help just by posting some of these very modest signs in their storefronts. Again, we have this in English, Chinese, and also Spanish. And they can put in a window, and it basically lets people know what to do. I think that Georgette or others may have it, but on our website, there is a lot more information, including 24-hour hotlines that are staffed in multiple languages. And so, CA is a part of this rotation, and basically, if you or someone you know sees ICE or something that looks like ICE in the neighborhood, you can call these numbers, right? And then what will happen is, again, we have people on these lines 24/7. They will dispatch folks out. to try and confirm if there is actually something happening, because there's a lot of rumors and a lot of misinformation, and we don't want to cause panic in the community. And so when we dispatch people out, we're able to confirm what is going on and then immediately activate our legal support network so that people have more immediate access to legal guidance and advice should they need it. So I'll leave this with folks here, and maybe just know you may feel like you don't need it. You may feel like you have nowhere to put up a sign, but you probably know others who do, and you probably know others who could put up a sign. And I think that we work with the San Francisco Interfaith Network, which is quite active in these efforts, not just here in San Francisco, but across the Bay Area. And it is a very faith-led effort, obviously, with Reverend Deborah Lee, who's been a great leader in our community. So I think if we are able to all continue to center the humanity, the dignity of every person, it's a reminder, and certainly a big part of our faith traditions as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Vince. It's so good to know that CAA is continuing such good work, and especially at these times, that you are keeping up to date on what's going on and can be a great go-to source for all of us who have concerns. When I hear Joanne, Henry, you, and the film we're about to see, it does remind me of how important it is for us to all work together, churches, community organizations, and that is what made City College possible here in the community. So let's see the film.
Before the Second World War, Chinese population was pretty much confined to Chinatown. It was impossible for Chinese Americans to even buy land, buy homes. Chinatown was a ghetto, an institutionalized ghetto, and probably the clearest manifestation of racism in America towards the Chinese.
I worked as an ESL teacher at the Chinatown North Beach English Language Center. And my ESL students at night were very typical immigrant workers who worked during the day, but right after work, they would come to the ESL class. They needed the English in order to be competitive in the San Francisco marketplace. And there were others who just wanted to learn English.
The Chinatown North Beach campus was formed in the late 1970s, and from that moment, they were looking for a home. We had a 20-year lease for the site at 940 Filbert Street. It was the old John Hancock Grammar School. But in reality, we still relied on the churches, the YMCA, family associations, wherever we could have classrooms.
I just want to the new building for us. I need the school to give us, the newcomers, to study English, make more money, and then make a good family. Something for my head. I feel it's like it come down. By looking, the ceiling fell down.
The building on Filbert Street, while that was the official campus center, it was really inadequate. The desks, the chairs were built for young students. The toilets and the sinks were all built for elementary school kids. They were not built for adults.
We walked all over Chinatown, North Beach, looking for possible classroom spaces. Anytime we saw a for rent sign, a for lease sign, we would look into it to see if that was someplace that we could use for classrooms. In 1989, after the earthquake, we realized we needed to find a permanent location. We were able to be part of Prop A. It was a bond for City College and then for the Unified School District. Once we got the money from Prop A, we were able to purchase property on the corner of Kearny and Washington, right across the street from the Hilton Hotel. It was actually being used as a parking lot. There were no tenants, there was no historical landmark to deal with. So I was happy, and I thought we were going to now build the campus.
What people need to remember is there are virtually no buildable new construction sites in Chinatown anymore. That doesn't displace housing, jobs, social services. This was probably one of the last sites.
After the Second World War, the wealthy people and the political class really wanted Kearny Street to be part of the downtown. People in the community decided to say, no more encroachment. And that's why you have this protracted fight over the eviction of nearly 200 elderly Chinese and Filipinos from the iHotel.
Even with many demonstrations of public support, the iHotel was demolished and became a hole in the ground.
The fight over iHotel was so costly that the developer would not even want it. It essentially put an end to further encroachment into Chinatown.
Once we identified the location for our new campus, I was hearing that there was opposition from the community. That was confusing to me because it didn't seem to match what I was seeing and hearing. I went into one of the sandwich shops, and the owner, Dan, told me that the Hilton was having these so-called community meetings that we didn't know about. His workers were Spanish-speaking, so they needed ESL classes, and the convenience of being able to take a credit class before a shift or after a shift was really important to him and his workers. When they were saying the community, I imagined, the churches, the business, the Chamber of Commerce, the hospital, everyone. Somehow I found myself at one of the meetings and saw that by community, they were really talking about the businesses that were surrounding the hotel.
Even when a nonprofit proposes something, there has to be a process of having the community understand the vocabulary, the issues, translating to what that means in their daily lives, and separating out fact from fiction. The community college, the administration, and the board needed the advice of somebody that could help them with the EIR process. They really were not versed in the complications of that.
An environmental impact report is a very complicated document. It has multitude of subject matters that has to be analyzed. I was provided a draft copy and find it to be inadequate because the community was never even aware of what's going on. I worked with the community college and had a presentation of the EIR to the Chinese community.
The design review process, through participation of the public, hopefully will come up with an alternative that everybody at the end of the day can agree that it is, quote, the preferred alternative. whether it's on one site, on two sites, or whatever.
Around late November 2006, I got a phone call from City College trustee Lawrence Wong. Hey, Henry, the Chinatown campus is in a bit of a trouble right now. I got a second call from Frances Lee, and she said, hey, Henry, this is an SOS call. There's opposition building, and the whole project may go down.
There was a bond in 1997 that resulted in no Chinatown campus. There was a bond in 2001. No Chinatown campus resulted from that. We've had another bond, and when are we going to build this?
It was not a situation where the funds were there and whenever we wanted to use them, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 years, they would be there. It wasn't. It was that the state funds had been allocated for projects that were ready to go. And unless City College Chinatown was able to get its act together, it would lose access to those funds.
So I called for an emergency meeting that was held in early December on a very cold weekend morning. And we got briefed by Lawrence and by Francis. Not only did the owners of Hilton Hotel oppose the building of a permanent home on the corner of Kearny and Washington Street, but we had certain individuals in the Chinese community who were in discussion or working with the hotel to literally scuttle the project. And that really scared all of us.
We were always doing research to try and uncover the opponents. We were always looking into who were the donors for elected officials. We were looking into the different political committees that were being set up by the owners of the Hilton Hotel.
I thought it was very sneaky. The corporate interests in San Francisco, together with the liberal Democrats in control of City Hall and the state legislature, decided to work together to secretly rezone this piece of property from what was originally 200 feet tall, reduce it down to 65, so that effectively you cannot do anything sizable.
The only way to deal with powerful elements such as justice investors, which built the Hilton, or the Washington Montgomery Tower Homeowners Association, was to have popular support, a lot of popular support.
We built out and reached out to other community organizations so that by the time that we announced the formation of Friends of Educational Opportunities in Chinatown, we had over 2,000 individuals who were part of the coalition. We knew for sure that the owners of Hilton Hotel was a big part of the opposition. So our motto at the first press conference was, Hilton, but out. With that motto, the community and the public at large would know what we were fighting up against.
There was a student service center that I went to called APAS. The director there, Dr. Minhua Ta, was involved in this struggle. I was overhearing her talking, and I thought, well, okay, sounds like a no-brainer, right? And then I was so surprised when other people in attendance at that meeting were talking about how people were against it. And I thought, well, that's really silly and stupid. That doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone be against the construction of an institution for higher education, an affordable one, and all that other stuff, right?
2 weeks after the press conference, State Senator Leland Yee held a press conference at Portsmouth Square Park.
Those are the reasons why I'm opposing this particular facility.
With him was City College trustee Julio Ramos and John Rizzo. And at that press conference, Leland announced the formation of the Education Coalition for Responsible Development. What was interesting about this so-called Education Coalition for Responsible Development was there was no educators involved. Their press conference reaffirmed for us that the owners of Hilton Hotel were lobbying members of the college boards in a very vigorous way.
When I agreed to be the attorney, I actually picked up the phone as a courtesy to let the opposing counsel know. So he asked for a meeting, took me out to a very nice lunch, and told me who are all the lobbyists that is working on the project and how they have all the unions, et cetera, oppose the project, and that they have all the votes already. So I really should just sit down with him and come up with a compromise, which I told him no.
It just demonstrated to us the power, the money, the influence of the opposition, because they were able to not only get community members, but they got Leland Yee to oppose the project, and he represented the western part of San Francisco. The opposition got Assembly Member Fiona Ma. She represented the western part of San Francisco. Chinatown was not even in her district, but she had connections to the whole liberal democratic machine.
I met with a representative from the Justice Investors to find out why were they willing to spend so much money to stop us from building our campus. And I was told that what was priced was their views, the panoramic views of the bay. This would be blocked, okay? You're looking up there, this would be blocked. You wouldn't, the view of Angel Island, the view of Alcatraz, the view of all the way out here would not be blocked. What the tourist would be prevented from seeing if our building got set up is the rooftops of Chinatown's buildings.
At one point, I believe the owners of the Hilton hired former supervisor Michael Yaki to represent them. And Michael was more candid about it. And I think he was willing to say to us what we all knew, which is that the Hilton and the condos behind it were trying to advance their financial interest. Their real interest in my mind is not illogical, but because they knew that it was also very selfish and greedy, they really tried to find other ways to present their point of view.
The visual quality impacts
travel, commuting, and safety concerns. Shadows on open spaces, earthquake safety.
Community is going to be overwhelmed.
Overwhelm the community.
We must preserve our special character.
The character and culture of the Chinatown neighborhood.
Should.
Being a planner and architect, I realized that things like pedestrian vehicular conflicts, shadow impacts, wind tunnel, these are not terms that are normally used by a lot of people. And the arguments by the opposition were so consistent, one would say they were scripted by the land use attorneys and the public relations firm of Justice Investors.
And then there are always legitimate environmental concerns that have to be addressed. Part of what I did was to try and meet with those folks to understand what really were the substantive concerns. Would the project be able to be completed with the resources that were available? Would it cast a shadow on the main public park in Chinatown that serves as its living room?
A shadow study was done, and the only shadow that would be cast by the 16-story building would be on the grass bank along Washington Street, and also the staircase from the garage.
We never considered shadow a non-issue or not important. We were just saying the impact was insignificant, far more insignificant than those buildings that were opposing us.
Legitimate community-based organizations had raised legitimate concerns, but were not aware how those concerns were being used by the opposition.
They were practicing an exercise of what I would call environmental colonialism. They were taking issues that they felt the community was concerned about, and they assumed them as their concerns to confuse the issues and to provide a lot of misinformation. I was a longtime member of an organization called Better Park and Recreation Committee in Chinatown. We pushed for Proposition K, which was a sunlight ordinance. One of the first actually in the world to say shadows was environmental impact and we wanted to protect public-owned recreational space. San Francisco Chinatown is very innovative and pioneering in the area of protecting the environment. We don't need outside people to tell us how to do it.
And then, of course, there was a Chinese culture Foundation, which is inside on the third floor of the Hilton Hotel. Hilton was able to enlist the Chinese Cultural Foundation to write a letter to oppose the project on the ground that this location is a bad feng shui.
The feng shui ones, I think, really irritated me in particular. I was clearly moved to tap into people's views about Orientalism, to warn other elected officials who are not Chinese or Asian American to defer to the wishes of the more visible Chinese American elected officials, including State Senator Li Lingyi and State Assembly Member Fiona Ma, as if they were the only two voices that mattered in the Chinese American community.
So they had all the bases covered, they thought, in showing that, they have Chinese members who support the opposition. And it was because of that we knew we had to show massive numbers of grassroots community members who were behind this very, very important, essential project.
So as these arguments, these environment arguments, started to be shown factually inaccurate, the opposition came up with a whole variety of schemes.
We were very careful in developing guiding principles to assess every proposal that might be put forth on the table.
People in Chinatown do care about shallows, do care about pedestrian safety, do care about quality design, what they're looking at. But paramount is they wanted also a college.
The representatives of the owners of the Hilton Hotel presented a plan that would have a 7-story building on the corner of Kearny and Washington Street and a 7-story building on Lot 5. That proposal of 2 7-story buildings that would add up theoretically to 14 stories was laughable. The architects built out the building so that it would cause even greater shadows on Portsmouth Square Park. The height of the proposal was way off. It didn't even meet state educational requirements.
Nobody would say to a hotel developer or office developer in San Francisco, why don't you build 2 smaller squat buildings instead of 1? Everybody knows there's efficiencies, cost efficiencies with having a taller building. They were just throwing pencil lead at the wall, seeing what stuck.
The real intention is to make sure that a 16-story building is not built, that whatever is built is going to be as low as possible, and if at all possible, nothing at all.
They figured the more options out there, they would just have the community constantly having to factually challenge those arguments, spend a lot of time and energy educating the community.
There's 30-something elected officials in San Francisco, and I recall us probably briefing every single one of them. We weren't looking for a savior, that's for sure. What was most important long-term was for the students, for the faculty, for the staff, for the families, for the residents of San Francisco, Chinatown, to understand what was happening and to be equipped with the tools to fight.
I took it upon myself, along with a few others, to spread the word around both City College campus and San Francisco State campus. I identified teachers who I felt would have a leaning towards supporting or be okay with us doing a presentation. I would then reserve the first 5 minutes of class or the last 5 minutes of class. I'd stagger it so that I could maximize the number of presentations per day. It was to a point where some students were tired of hearing me talk about it. They'd say, that's Andrew Hom, the City College Chinatown campus guy. And so that's okay. That's a good problem to have. What was really great was we even got some students so fired up that they started joining us in collecting signatures and spreading the word, talking to their church groups, talking to their people in the neighborhood, talking to the other students at other colleges.
We actually invested quite a bit of time and resources to educate the Chinese ethnic media. As a result, they were covering the issue with sometimes 2-3 stories a week. People from the Chinese-speaking community were learning about this struggle well beyond San Francisco.
Everyone understood that education today would mean an opportunity tomorrow. It didn't take convincing. It just took information dissemination and the support of many organizations.
Phil and Ma and Li and Yi took out full-page ads in the Chinese language newspaper. Well, we have to counter. So we put out our full-page ad in support of the project, listing of around 60 community organizations. And even more important is that we circulated a petition. We were all out there in the streets on weekends soliciting signatures. We can say to the media that we have 25,000 people who say they support the project. They cannot do that.
The faculty used their ironing boards from home as tables to collect signatures. The students were very involved. They led a letter writing campaign. There was a stack of letters that they handed to the board members at the October 18th meeting when they voted on the 3 resolutions.
On the day of the meeting, we were still organizing. Some folks were clearly behind us, but we didn't have the votes going into the meeting.
Collectively as a group and individuals, we knew we had given it all we could. And we stood by how we went about it too, with integrity.
I remember there was a lot of anxiety among some of the students. Some students made their way into the room where the board were holding the meeting, but because we had so many people, some people had to stay outside.
You always have as many people as you can for any project approval when it's controversial, because the bodies supporting it counts.
The students were standing in the hallway, making a lot of noise. I know at least one board member was feeling quite intimidated and actually asking me to stop it, but I had not organized it. Our Chinese students are organized. They have banners. They have food. They're ready.
On the other side, the attorney was there, some of the residents in the condominium, and other people that represent the owner of the building where Hilton Hotel is.
There were 3 resolutions that were really vital that night for them to approve.
Well, the first vote on certification, I think, is kind of a formality, that we had all the complete information and people were willing to accept that.
Trustee Berg?
Yes.
Trustee Wong?
Yes.
Trustee Rodis?
Yes.
Trustee Ramos?
Yes.
Trustee Greer?
Yes.
Trustee Rizzo?
Aye.
Trustee Marks?
No.
Motion passes 6-1.
The second vote was pivotal on the exemption.
If City College did not exempt itself from the height requirement, a viable campus building could never be built under any circumstances.
Trustee Berg?
Yes.
Trustee Wong?
Yes.
Trustee Rodis?
Yes.
Trustee Ramos?
Yes.
Trustee Greer? Trustee Rizzo?
Yes.
Trustee Rizzo? Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Unanimous.
I ran to some people sitting next to me. I think it was Julie Tang and Lily, and I said, we should stick to the 16. Let's go for the 16. Let's not go for anything lower.
So now we have the motion on the table is S3.
Yes.
As amended. As amended.
I think it was past 2 or 3 in the morning. People were exhausted.
Do we want to do a roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Berg?
Yes.
Trustee Wong?
Yes.
Trustee Rodis?
Yes.
Trustee Ramos?
Yes.
Trustee Greer?
Yes.
Trustee Rizzo?
No.
Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Passes.
I was like, wow, it's over, right? Well, no, it wasn't over. I mean, other issues remained, but at least that was over.
So many parts of us were there that night. It would be wrong to be like, it was just the Chinese American community. The Chinese American community is such a wonderfully rich, complicated, diverse community.
They did not approve the 16-story project. They approved an alternative project that have a 14-story building and also a much lower building down the street.
But you can't tell me taking 2 stories off of the top of the building, lessen any impacts, design, shadow, wind-wise, or whatever, It was a saving face concession.
Everywhere I turn when I'm walking through the building, I see the input from the people that we worked with.
The way the building came out was actually so much more beautiful and such a fine example of urban design for this specific lot than I ever even imagined. When it illuminates kind of like a glass box and you see the activity of the students going up the stairs and in the lobby, it announces to the community that it's an educational space and it's part of the community.
I view the building of the St. Mary's School between iHotel and City College campus, and of course the City College campus itself, to be a restoration of historic Chinatown.
Fighting for community college opportunities is a tangible, meaningful, and critical way for students and families to get ahead.
Even if the opposition has lots of power and money, it doesn't mean they'll win. People who don't have much in the way of resources have one thing that's very important: they can speak out. And they can speak out as a group and make themselves heard.
Just want to say to Henry and Joanne, we decided here on our own to use YouTube's captioning option to help those who are a little hard of hearing. And mostly it got it right, but yeah, instead of grassroots community, we have grassroots comedians. Yeah. Would you like to come up now as we have questions and answers? As I mentioned earlier, we will alternate, so we'll take questions, if there are any, from folks who are in person, and then turn to those on Zoom. So wait a second so we can get the microphone to you.
So how many floors did you actually get in the end?
14 in the main tower and 5 in the smaller building down the street. And I just wanted to say, you know, it says bring a community college to Chinatown, but we were already here. We were already serving 6,500 students at the time. So when the opposition was saying things like Muni would be overwhelmed, we were already using Muni. The difference is that they would be dropped off in one place versus scattered throughout Chinatown, because we continue to use all of the different locations throughout Chinatown. You know, the family associations, the churches, wherever we could find space. And I think what was important is that we needed a permanent campus. We were, you know how the college goes through budget crises? And at one of those times, the board had all the administration come to a meeting, and they said that one way they would save money was to eliminate all rental facilities. And at the end of that meeting, what that meant was the Chinatown community, the Mission community, and the Southeast community. Those were the 3 campuses where all of the rooms, classrooms being used were rental sites. And at that point, the three administrators at that point said, if we don't find permanent locations, we cannot guarantee service to our communities because you don't know who's going to be on the board next. So that's another reason why it was so important to have a permanent facility.
If I can add, one of the silver linings of a 2-building site versus one 16-story building was that in the second site on Washington Street, the campus was able to put in an auditorium for community use, for events and the like. Right now, the auditorium is not in operation because of some issues with rain in another part of the building, but we hope that it will come up to speed pretty soon so that the auditorium will be able to be used.
Well, and also this building, sort of the inspiration, I would say, is we were working with Wu Yi at the time, and we were partnering in a parenting conference. And I remember all of us running around Chinatown helping, and I had the key and I had to run up to CAA, which is next door, to open the door so they could use the community room. And as I stood there waiting for the parents to come, I saw all these parents with their strollers running out of the Hilton Hotel, going up to the Baptist Church, going to the Y, coming to CAA, and I said, this is crazy that this community doesn't have a space that we, large enough that we can do an event like that. We were using at that time, the Holiday Inn, but they were charging rent. They weren't giving us the space for free. They weren't even giving us like a community rate for use of the space. So that's sort of part of the inspiration of having an auditorium, having different space for different events. Like one person said to me, Joanne, it's like you're getting ready to have parties or something. And I go, yeah, we are, because it's designed so that you can take the stairway up to the library, but there's media space there. So we imagine you can do like a book reading. You can have some special events that the community, that we could partner with the community in doing.
Are there any questions on Zoom? Don't see any. All right, questions here.
Thank you. If you take a look at the grandmas and grandpas playing cards on Portsmouth Square, you see a lot of them actually holding an umbrella because they don't want the sun. So in my understanding of Chinese culture, people don't like sun that much in general. They want shades. So to me, this kind of shade study, or is it called a shadow study, to put it in a very dramatic way, to me, it feels like another sign of environmental colonialism. There's this Western projection onto like what community members actually need or want. So I'm curious what comments you may have, if any, on that.
The film talks about the passage of Proposition K that was authored then by former supervisor Billy Maher. At that time, in the early 1980s, there was quite a building boom going around in the financial district. So there were a lot of proposed buildings that were being looked at and possibly being built. And if all those proposals had been approved, it would in fact created significant shadows or lack of sunlight or wind issues on Portsmouth Square Park. And I think it was because of that concern not only for Portsmouth Square Park, but for other parks in San Francisco, there was an effort to make sure that there would at least be some semblance of sunlight for park users. I can say personally, and I'm elderly now, I live in the Richmond district and I hate the fog, I hate the overcast, and I love having sunlight. So there are different sides of the story. And for the older folks who play cards in Portsmouth Square during the day, I guess as long as given the long time that they sit out there in the park, they probably are wise to have a little shade because they don't want to come down with cancer or some kind of skin disease. So it's a balancing act in terms of, what would be a nice park environment.
All right, I see a question on Zoom. Carol.
Hi, Joanne and Henry. It's nice to see you, and thank you for all your work in the past. I do have a question in regard to the current state of City College Chinatown campus. Two questions. First question, is it at full capacity at this time for enrollment? And secondly, I did do a very quick search of ESL classes, and I've noted that there are very few that are offered in the evening, actually none. So compared to your original intent for our immigrant families who work during the day and attend classes at night, I'm wondering if there is a disconnect with our current programming in City College.
It's not at full capacity right now. I think the campus is going through some changes in terms of what their focus is. I think when people think of Mission Campus or they think of Chinatown campus, they think of ESL only. In fact, I had one faculty member who said I had lost my way when we were designing this building because they saw that our mission was for the immigrant population in ESL only. And what they failed to see was that the immigrant population, once you get to a particular level of ESL, what they're really interested is in jobs. And so this campus, it has had space for child development, it has space for the fashion, which is sewing, and the whole idea was to bring in credit courses as well for the future. And transitional studies classes. There's a portion of the community in North Beach, and they were parents who would only get 4 hours of childcare so that they could go to school. Well, of the 4 hours, 2 of them were taken up in transportation to get them out to the John Adams campus for transitional studies classes. So the campus itself is not designed to be for ESL only. Unfortunately, during budget crises and during the pandemic and changes in administration, Chinatown lost its, I don't know how to put it. It's been hard for this current campus dean to be able to recoup many of the hours that this campus used to have. In fact, this campus was one of the only ones that offered 7 a.m. classes, and it was one of the only ones that offered classes 7 days a week at the time. And administration, some of the leadership said, no one does 7 days a week and no one does 7 a.m. classes, and took some of those hours away. In fact, one year, it just wiped out all of the Saturday classes, and they said, oops, it was a computer glitch. And I said, well, no, you have to enter each class. How do you wipe out all of Saturday with one keystroke? But since I was no longer working at the college, I really had very little say. The current dean Kit Dye, it has been trying to recoup some of the hours and get some of those hours back. I'm not sure how to help her with that right now, because ESL department chair seems to be headed in a different direction.
I mean, I want to add that Campus Dean Kit Dye has really been a fighter
Yes.
to counter the budget challenges that face City College as a whole. And she's always fighting to grow the programs at the Chinatown North Beach campus because there is the need. But if she's not given the budget or the instructional hours to expand non-credit courses for adult immigrants and equally important credit courses, it's an uphill battle, and we do need to support her and to follow very closely how decisions are made by the City College Board of Trustee and Administration. So while we had this humongous fight in 07, 08 to get the campus building built, the fight is never over. Shortly after this struggle, CAA and many community organizations, as well as students and faculty, fought against the effort by the Accreditation Commission to remove accreditation from City College. Some of you may have followed that fight. It was a very, very nasty, ugly fight, unfair fight against City College. And it's well known that this community played a very key role in persuading the city attorney to challenge the Accreditation Commission. And also this community went up to Sacramento to get bridge funding so that funding support during that accreditation fight would not totally bottom out. So there's always an issue that needs to be addressed with community college opportunities. And today, as we experience a downturn in the economy, a slowdown in job hiring, the data shows from a historical patterns, when there's increased unemployment or lack of job openings, people come back to community college to seek out new opportunities, courses that would enable them to improve their employment skills and potential.
I think also historically in this community, I've always felt that Chinatown had to adhere to a different set of criteria. Even when we wanted to use this space and you offer this space to us for a classroom, I had to justify it. I had to show them how many students we would serve, what kind of revenue we would generate, what it would cost to run a class here. Well, I think Chinatown has been very generous to the campus. We had some sites that were giving us the classrooms for $1 a year or $1 a month. And it's
CAA
like,
did not charge. When they use our community room,
right.
We didn't charge.
We used the public library. We used every space we could get. And of course, we want to keep the costs down. I think that was part of the reason the Methodist Church didn't renew our lease. They said we were using too much toilet paper. But it's like we always have to justify our hours. And I think Frances Lee, who was our first official director of the campus, did very well. She was able to take the dollars and grow the program. She's a counselor by background, but she knows those numbers, and she would be able to say to me, Joanne, you have a couple of classes running low. What are you going to be doing about them? Meaning, do something to make those classes more productive. Either you're going to advertise or you're going to combine. And so we had a really good system of waiting lists and really serving our students, but we wanted to be able to expand that program. Computer classes that say require dedicated classrooms, we couldn't do that in a rental site. We were in classrooms that were being used for Sunday school on Sunday. Well, you can't use it for multi-purpose if you put computers into those rooms on a permanent location. So I think that this community has always had to advocate, and I've been trying to think about how we can help KIT with that. There is a new vice chancellor of academic affairs, and we've had conversations, and I think he's trying, because he's also a numbers person, so he's looking at the data. KIT, I think, is wonderful. She was actually a student when she first came from Hong Kong, and I think she really believes in the mission, but it's how to help her overcome some of what the newer administration is seeing. When COVID came, she actually found a way to stay in contact with our thousands of students. But instead of being praised for it and asked the other deans to say, you should go do the same thing with your campuses, she was sort of dinged for it, like, why are you doing that? But she's a fighter, she's still pushing.
Is there one here? Katie.
So I have, you can hold it. I have one comment and two questions. First one is that I think it's really ironic that the whole question about shade came up with the building, because I remember clearly when Holiday Inn, predecessor of Hilton, came, they wanted to build that horrific concrete bridge which casts a shadow like 24/7 over Portsmouth Square. And, you know, kids get, you know, decrease the sunlight there by like 50%. So I think that's really ironic. My first question is for Mr. Deere. Has it really been clarified what the motivations to the opposition really were? I mean, in the film, they kind of started about the encroachment issue that financial district wanted to, you know, expand and, you know, didn't want that land used for City College. But ultimately, it sounded like it was mainly the Hilton and the condominium people that were in strong opposition. So I was wondering if you could clarify what if you've determined what the real motivations were to the opposition. And secondly, I guess this is more for Joanne, is that, you know, how much has that whole accreditation battle, or what do you call it, the struggle, the conflict, has that really impacted the programs at this campus?
Okay, I'll take your first question. And thank you for your question. What was the motivation for the opposition? It really just came down to the hotel did not want their window views to be blocked. They had just invested a fair chunk of money to renovate the building so that it would become a spa. So if you recall, during the Holiday Inn days of that hotel, it was just like a Holiday Inn. But then the owner decided to renovate the hotel, put in some money into it, and upgrade it so that it was a lot more fancy and more snazzy. So they felt that they were going to lose money in the process, or they would not capture what they had invested in terms of renovating the building. With regards to the Washington Montgomery condo owners, again, it was a matter of their views being blocked by what they thought would be a very tall building. And that, they have nice views on the condo on Washington and Montgomery, and they just didn't want it to be blocked. When we asked the opponents, why did you oppose it? Their first answer was, oh, we don't oppose the building of Chinatown campus. We believe that the community needs educational opportunities, but we don't think that this site is right, that there are other sites that might be available. Well, that was a little disingenuous on their part, because there, as Jenny Liu said in the film, there was no other site really available in the Chinatown North Beach area for a campus of this size. There were some harebrained suggestions that, oh, maybe it could go some other place in some other neighborhood. That just would not have served the needs of the community. The opposition was so resolute in protecting their financial interests, they hired a lobbying firm to put on this PR campaign. And they went to Bob McCarthy, and I forget the name of his lobbying agency, but Bob McCarthy is a big-time lobbyist. He did campaigns for Dianne Feinstein. He did campaigns for other political figures in the city. And when he got this contract to lobby against the college, he then used all his political connections in San Francisco to line them up to express doubts or opposition to the, to the building of the campus. So it wasn't by accident that someone like Leland Yee and Fiona Ma got involved. It was not by accident. There were a lot of political relationships that were in play, potential for political donations in the future. There was a community member who I've known since I came back from Peace Corps Kenya. He all of a sudden wrote an article in one of the neighborhood association newspapers for San Francisco expressing doubts about the environmental impact of the proposed building. This person had never expressed any position on environmental issues, but he wrote an opinion piece in their association article, newsletter. Well, we prevailed. What happened afterwards? That person who wrote that article in the association newsletter, he ended up running for a candidacy to represent the Sunset District in San Francisco. So I have to believe that he had in his mind potential political donations to support his candidacy. So that's really the ugly side of politics in San Francisco. I mean, San Francisco is an overwhelmingly Democratic city. I'm a Democrat. I consider myself to be a liberal Democrat, but that doesn't mean that every liberal Democrat understands the needs of a community like Chinatown.
I just want to add to that. When we were first starting to plan, this wasn't our original site. This was the second site. So we went to the owner of the Holiday Inn at the time, and we're standing in his office, and he's looking out on the site, across the street. And he said to me, Joanne, you should build a nice small business school across the street. But for ESL, it'll be better for your students to be in Chinatown. So, I'm standing there looking at this site going, what does he really mean? Because that's just across the street. Chinatown is just across the street. And I suddenly realized what he meant was he did not want to see our ESL students around his hotel, that he didn't want us walking back and forth, in front of his building. And I looked at him and I said, gee, I'm sorry, I thought we were in Chinatown, because my mother worked in the sewing factory across the street that was right next door to where we were going to be building our building. And I think it was the reality of realizing that. So when I found myself at the so-called meeting, I actually invited myself to that meeting, and I sat there with the construction, the project manager at the time, and I raised my hand and said, this is not a community meeting. This is just some business people that you know around your building. So this is not a community meeting. And then when he continued on and he sort of ignored me, I raised my hand again and I said, well, you know, I can actually get my seniors to be protesting in front of your building, and you know, and the project manager at the time said, he goes, Joanne, you're lucky you're sitting over here across the room, way across the room, because he's about ready to hit you. So I think that really said something to me. It wasn't just the college, it wasn't the programs, it's the fact that he didn't want the immigrant students around their building. And the follow-up to that is when we actually started doing the construction and we put up the glass mural on the side with the girl from the Shrimp Village with the couplet, we got a call from their general manager, and the staff would not give me the message because they're thinking she doesn't need any more people yelling at her, right? And finally I returned the call, and what he wanted was to be able to put our building, the fact that we're right across the street from them, onto their website and include a picture of our building on their website. And we were just amazed. And I said to him, I go, what did you think we were gonna do? Build an ugly building? It was just amazing. But then after that, when the building was completed and we had our grand opening, the Hilton then wanted to use our smaller 5-story building for the auditorium, the classroom space. It's great conference space. If you want to have a conference, you can have like a large meeting in the auditorium, breakout rooms in that separate building. And that was part of the design, that they would use it for their events. So they actually, in a way, profited over this campus that they fought so many years for. In the end, I would say they sort of changed their tune. When we were constructing, they put cameras up on their building to shine onto our project, to watch for infractions, what we were doing wrong. They report every time we locked our doors 5 minutes late and said we were making noise. And then finally, one time, whoever it is, you know, I guess it's the sound noise police came out and said to them that the party that they were hosting on the bridge was making more noise than our construction project. Then they stopped filing all of those complaints. Yeah, so it's not just an education institution. I think that there's more to it than that. And in terms of Kay's question about accreditation is for the whole college, and it's not just for the Chinatown North Beach campus. We're considered a separate education center at the state level, and so we get dollars at the state level. So here's another example. Going through this process, I discovered that as a separate education center, we were getting like $1 million a year to support our campus. And that was very disheartening, because you saw pictures of what the John Hancock building was like. Well, the campus, the administration, not campus administration, but the college administration wasn't willing to put any money into the John Hancock building because it was a rental facility. They wouldn't even repave the driveway, you know, for the cars. I would always have to try to figure out a way to make it a health and safety issue. Then they would come. So during this process to learn that we were actually getting money from the state was very sad for me. Yeah.
I knew half an hour would not be enough for Q&A. Let's continue on. Carol is on Zoom.
Thank you for the explanation of the budget constraint. And my question is, understanding the current budget still, do you see the church, again, being a solution to these night classes and Saturday classes? Because the budget is what it is. But I really want to make sure the population that we started out to help, maybe City College itself cannot do all that, that there's still a way within the community to support this demographic of people who are in need. So just wondering, because there is that history within the churches in coming together and supporting this group, but I don't see that collective effort right now to support that. So the question is, how can we help given City College still have some budget constraints?
I've actually been retired for some time now, so I'm not actively involved in that process. But that's actually a very interesting idea, Carol. I would like to bring that up with Kit Dye, because with the high rise, when the campus is open, we need to have a building engineer on site. So that is additional cost. And then we would have to have public safety as well. And that is additional cost that we didn't have when we had, when we used like the 40+ locations throughout Chinatown. So that would be something interesting to take forward to Kit.
Yeah, the other reason why I brought this up is because City College Chinatown campus is not at full capacity. There are rumors City Hall are looking at possible space for a lot of these private schools that are petitioning to go private and are looking for space. So there is connection with San Francisco Unified, City College, and the city in kind of responding to these petitions and appeals for privatization of specifically immersion schools. So I just want to kind of figure out that in the mix of all that, the people who we set out to serve are not missing in this whole picture. And how can churches who are mainly empty during the week can still fill that void? So something to think about, I think.
Yes, well, I will present that to Kit.
Thank you.
All right, is there a question in the sanctuary?
Question up here.
I would find it beyond ironic and sad to lose the possibility of having classes in the campus that people fought so hard to build and go back to taking a room here and a room there. I mean, and then allowing privatization to move into what the community built. I don't think concession is, one of the reasons that motivated me to come today is because I wanted to be reminded of how difficulties can be overcome by collaboration. And I'm so grateful to people like the two of you who fought so hard and made it possible. So let's not go backwards. Let's not look at how we can be nice. Let's keep fighting.
Thank you so much for your words of encouragement. I just want to emphasize again, when we experienced this crisis of opposition in 2007 and 2008, it made a huge difference to have a community-wide coalition. It was not just one person or one organization. People who, and groups who had not worked together, normally really came together. So as Georgette said in her introduction, the Christian Union was very, very present. Reverend Calvin Wong, and then later on Franco Kwan. He came to our weekly meetings that we held every Friday at 5 p.m. to figure out what was going to be our plans to oppose the opposition and to fight for approval for the campus building. And it really was so gratifying that when it came time for us to collect signatures, all these groups that were part of the coalition, including the teachers and the students and staff, they all fanned out in Chinatown to gather signatures, over 25,000 signatures. In those days, that was a lot because it was paper and pencil. We didn't have smartphones and the internet or change.org or GoFundMe pages. It was quite remarkable, and it was the role of ethnic press. We had no coverage from English press about our struggle, but the ethnic press, as Vin Pan said in the film, did such a wonderful job that when we put out those ironing boards, which Georgette's mom, Isabel, she organized the ironing boards to make sure that we had enough ironing boards. When we put out those ironing boards, people literally came up to the ironing boards to sign the petition with us even prompting them or explaining to them what the petition was all about. I had never, ever experienced anything like that. For those of us who have done kind of, petition gathering, more often than not, you would have to stop people or explain to them what it was about and so on and so forth. But in that case, they just came and signed. It was really gratifying to witness that.
And then there was that other petition campaign, right, from the opposition. The opposition also had a petition campaign, and it just confused the community because it was like sign our petition in support, but it really wasn't in support, and our students didn't know the difference. Yeah.
Well, the opposition, without getting into all the gory details, they pulled a lot of funny tricks and stunts. But over time, we prevailed because we really worked with all the community groups and organizations and with the press to get the word out.
Right. Yeah. But I think we accomplished what was really important is that the building is there, is a permanent facility. So even during the COVID crisis and stuff, we have the facility. So even if they reduce the classes, now the goal is to bring those classes back to the community. Whereas if we didn't have that permanent facility, we probably would have lost the rental sites, and it would have been very hard to rebuild. And that was, I think I mentioned we lost the lease with one of the churches. And the staff had said, well, what are you going to do? And I go, I'm going to enroll them. And I'm going to have to go out and look for this space. I'm going to have to appeal to the churches. We're going to appeal to the family associations. And the staff member, I remember saying, well, that's crazy, Joanne, because what if you can't find the space by August 15th or whenever the first day was? And I said, then I will have 500 people yelling at me. But that was better than losing those students or not being able to serve them, because everything is based on numbers with the district. It's like the more students you can get, the more resources we will give you. I guess more like a car dealership. The more cars you sell, the more cars we'll give you to sell. But if we can't get those instructional hours, we can't build our enrollment. So right now it's trying to figure out what's going on and why we can't get more instructional hours here.
Your comments about my mom and ironing boards that fits. That just reminded me of the time she was after me to use the ironing board, do my ironing. Yeah. Yes, Gloria.
Okay. Hello, Joanne and Henry. I'm Gloria Lee. I'm just wondering if the funding for City College was based on the number of students in attendance per day as the elementary school. Because I remember in elementary school, if a student was absent, but if they had a note from home saying ill or went to see the doctor or something legitimate, it would be counted in attendance and they would get the funding for the class. So is City College run that way in the beginning or even now? Because I heard that you mentioned at first by getting some provision according to your students, the student counts.
I think the student head count in terms of number of students in a class probably is used more in terms of programming. But in terms of revenue generation, it's based on the number of students in your class that's actually sitting in class. At least that's how it used to be.
Mhm.
Occur here. I don't know if the funding formula has changed, but the non-credit program used to be based on actual, basically, people in seats. Right,
Thank you.
yeah.
Is there a question here? Yeah, Craig?
More of a comment, and I'm Craig. I'm part of the church, grew up here. As far as Kit Dai, we invited her to come tonight, but she was committed to the resource fair that's happening outside, supposed to be happening in Portsmouth Square. Well, the rain sort of washed that out, but they moved it indoors. So I'm thinking they moved it to City College. That's my guess, but we were communicating with her right now. So if that wasn't there, they couldn't do things like that.
Yes.
So I think that's the resource fair has been moved indoors, according to Kit. But my other comment is that we're very appreciative to both of you. We knew it took a village to do all of this. I was at that meeting when it was shown at City College, seeing all those people who were reminiscing on how hard fought it was. And we appreciate Henry and CAA for all the work that is done in the community. When you mentioned one name, it was always associated with the other. CAA, Henry Dare, CAA, Henry Dare, both. And we appreciated that. But from the church, and for me anyway, I really appreciate Joanne Low, watching her grow up. We all kind of grew up together here. I think the church is very proud to see what you have accomplished. We watched you as a young lady and then going into the field, taking over and leading City College, coming back here and asking us to support the fight and seeing it built and then going up to be Vice Chancellor. We're just very proud of you. That was it.
Thank you. So you might not know it, but Craig would actually contact me regularly to give me updates on what was going on with the construction. I remember one time he called and goes, "There's a big hole in the ground, but there's nothing else happening. What's going on?"
I took pictures on a regular basis because we're here every single week. And I just took pictures of it going up, just like that.
Right. He would give me updates.
I see no more questions on Zoom. JJ, are you raising your hand? Okay. She is saying there are 2 comments from the Zoom chat. If they are not obscene, we'll look at them, sure.
Okay.
Or read
I
it.
can read these comments for, I think it's shareable as well. Says, oh, no, it's not shareable, never mind. So from Donna Jones says, I enjoyed the film immensely. It's a continuation of racism and discrimination, trying to exclude, trying to prevent us from improving, expanding, not allowing us to purchase property, and so on. It's still such a struggle. And from Herman Chu, we have, thank you for the presentation, very informative and inspirational. A well-fought fight against colonialism. And from Nancy Cirolo, sorry if I butchered your name, she says, where can we find a link to the film so that we can share with others?
The question is, where can you find the link? CAA has a private channel with a YouTube link, and I'll share it with Georgette, and Georgette can then share it with whomever in this congregation may want to view it. We have another link that is on the MP4 video, and is a little more complicated where you have to always get permission to open it, but with a YouTube link, it's a lot easier to access. So I'll provide it to Georgette. And we are very pleased for those individuals who want to know more or to be reminded about the struggle, because it is important not to lose the history of the fight, because today there are other social justice challenges that face our communities and other communities here in the city and across the Bay Area and across the country. And many of the tactics and strategies that we use remain applicable in carrying out struggles today. And the most important one that I would point out is, it is really vital that people who are part of a struggle, that they have trust in each other, that they understand what is the goal of the struggle and what they want to achieve, and that there are no personal agendas, that the fight is for the common good, for the public good. And we were very fortunate in this City College struggle that we all trusted each other, and that the groups that joined the coalition trusted each other. We would not have succeeded if we did not have that trust within ourselves.
I think also one of the things is that people know that in communities you have different sides, different factions, and that's also true here in Chinatown. But I think Professor Ling Chi Wang was able to bring two of those big factions together. That was amazing, you know.
There are a lot of factions in Chinatown.
A lot of factions in Chinatown, and when people talk about different organizations, there are those that were for us and those that weren't for us. And I think it was really hard for me. I remember going home and just being totally depressed and talking to Mom about it, going, it was the Chinese community people that were saying, you should go to south of Market, or you should do this or do that. And that was very hard for me. You know, we had the lobbyists, the McCarthys, but it was sort of like when someone in a Chinese community and saying, you should go to south of Market, or you shouldn't be building this. That was very hard to take.
Actually, one last comment if I may. The lobbyists, you know, after this battle concluded, with some help, we calculated what they may have spent in hiring Bob McCarthy, all these high-priced attorneys, to not only challenge it during the EIR process, but they also filed a lawsuit after the project was approved by the College Board. But easily, they spent over $1 million to scuttle the project. And we barely raised $25,000 to buy postcards, stamps, and other things during that time. So it was really a David versus Goliath battle that took place. We didn't know how much money they really put in to the battle. We knew they had a lot of high-powered political figures, but we did not know how much money that they really threw at, you know, against the project.
Yeah. Be careful who you vote into office, too.
All right. Well, thank you both. Thank you all for coming out on a rainy day. Thanks to all of you on Zoom. This 2 hours was an education in itself. of the importance and power of community organizing done with integrity. And I'm glad that we recorded it, so for those who want to see the film with the comments, we will make that link available too. Okay. So thank you again.
Thank you.